There's one. Yeah, man, smoked it. Funky hooks it, man. Funky hooks it. Little guy. Little guy smoked it. Man, they're liking this jig. In today's video, I've got a lure review for you guys. This is a company that I'm going to be talking about today. It's this fairly new company. It's actually run by a guy that's close to my age, about a year younger than me, who's in high school, real good young angler named Chris. He produces his own jigs, his own hand-tied jigs, and I've gotten to fish these jigs for the past couple months and gotten to kind of get a better idea as to what these jigs have to offer, and I've been extremely impressed as to how they've held up against different situations and styles of fishing. This company is called Lanier Jigs. He's based out of Georgia. He fishes mainly Lake Lanier. You know, he's in that area, and he's got a variety of different jigs. He's got an arky head style jig, he's got a football head jig, and a swim head style jig. The one that I fished today, and the one that I want to talk about mainly, is the swim jig. I don't have it with me right now, partially because of a poor knot and a big fish. I ended up losing it, but I ended up catching about 30 or 20 fish at some of the local ponds here, and I like fishing baits like that at local ponds. I think it's cool to fish them at big lakes and try them out on big waters where it's more difficult, but I think the best place to put a lure to test, put a jig like Lanier Jigs to the test, is to actually go out on the water where I can catch a consistent amount of fish, and I can catch a large amount of fish in a short amount of time. You know, I don't have a lot of time today. I had about 2 to 3 hours, and I wanted to see how this jig held up against multiple bites, multiple hits, and multiple fish. And I was able to squeeze, 20, 30 bass in about 2 or 3 hours, and I was extremely impressed as to how this jig held up. So in today's video, I'm going to be talking about how I swim jig, how I use the swim jig, how I fish it, and how I really was impressed as to how awesome and how much quality and time Chris puts into his Lanier jigs. So I hope you guys stay tuned and enjoy today's show. And one thing I really like about this jig is it runs through the grass pretty true. It doesn't come back full of cabbage, doesn't come back full of snot. It generally comes back with little to no grass on, and I don't have to pop it and twitch it to kind of get that grass off either. I'm popping it just for the action right now, but when I get through that grass, it comes right through, and that's really important to me in a swim jig, mainly because that's where most of those fish are going to be hanging out this time of year. They're going to be hanging out in the grass. So being able to have a jig that can get in and out of that stuff is perfect, because if, let's say you were to go through a lone patch of weeds and there's 2 or 3 bass in the lone patch of weed, and you go through that patch, right through those weeds, and you start picking up a bunch of clutter, fish aren't going to be able to see. They're just going to see a hunk of moving weeds. But if it comes through true, without any weeds like that, I mean, that's just so valuable. The bass are going to see that. They're going to key in on it. It's something that's coming in their natural habitat, coming through right next to them, and they're going to usually hit it 9 out of 10 times. So that's something to really keep in mind when picking your swim jig. And that's what I really like about this one right here, is it just runs through the grass. And that's kind of what's enabled me to catch some of these fish today. Is this? Wow, that's not bad. This bait runs right through the grass, and when it does, that's usually when I get my hit. I can feel that bait running through some soft vegetation, and when I do, when it comes out of there, I usually end up with a nice fish. Nice largemouth. Looks like a Florida strain, doesn't it? It's all gray and green and long. It's quite an awesome jig. These aren't too expensive. They're fairly priced, in my opinion, and they're handmade, hand-tied. And I don't normally ever buy, manufactured jigs that are just kind of pumped out like that, that have the bands on them. I always stick with hand-tied jigs because the skirts never slip. If the skirt's going to come off, it's going to come off on a break. Something that happened with me, I'll pull on it too hard and be my fault. And I just know that bait's going to last longer than a bait with a band, because the bands can slide, the bands can deteriorate, the bands are made of silicone and plastic, and they can actually sometimes just kind of wear away, especially when it comes into contact with other plastics and it gets a little bit hot. And these hand-tied jigs are just the way to go, in my opinion. All of the Lanier jigs are hand-tied, which I really like. That's just something that I always look for. Not necessarily always a swim jig, but just a jig in general, hand-tied. Really, really important. Oh man, dude, they're really hitting it good. Really hitting it good. It's another nice one. Another nice one. Look at that. Think you wanted that jig? Oh boy. The rig up I'm using, if you're wondering, is a 7.3 Kistler magnesium swim bait rod. This rod is perfect for this kind of swim jig technique. Running through grass, running through heavy vegetation, because it's got the torque, it's got the backbone, but it's got the tip needed for swim jigging. It's a swim bait rod, so it's used for smaller swim baits, anything from 5 to 3 inches. And that tip's perfect. Able to load up on them. It's like a cross between a crank and a crankbait rod and a jig rod. Oh, that's a good one. That's a pretty good one right there, man. Oh, yeah, she's chunky. That's the kind of fish we get out of here. This one right here. This one right here is the kind that we like to get out of here. Oh man, nice bass. A little beat up, wear for tear, but it's a good fish. Good fish. Thank you, bud. Smoking it today, man. They are on the bait. Threw wacky worms earlier, threw some frogs, just to kind of get it right above that grass, and none of which have seemed to produce fish even close to what the swim jigging technique has brought today. There's one. See, that fish just tapped it. You know, I'm running this bait right over the grass, and they're just coming up, and they're not working too hard for it right now. Some of these fish are done spawning. Some of them are still spawning. And I've seen a lot of spawned out fish, a lot of skinny fish today. But there's still some that are on the prowl. And most of the time when you throw the swim jig, you're kind of trying to target some of those females. Like, he's got a little forked tail. He may be fanning a little bit, but who knows? They could still be in pre-spawn. He's been having some cold water here in northern Illinois. So it really all depends. The thing with a swim jig, too, is it dominates not only in pre-spawn but post-spawn as well. When those fish start schooling up together, they start feeding in packs. And it's a good bait to catch multiple fish in one area. It's a very versatile bait, especially this Lanier Jigs one too. It just gets in and out of the grass very easily. See what I mean? That same spot, there's another fish. And I know I'm fishing a pond. You know, I know that this isn't necessarily a big lake where you can apply all these techniques that I'm discussing today, but it's an example. It's just an example of a bigger picture. Yeah. Oh man, this one snuck right up on it. Oh. Another one right there. It's a little bit better one, a little chunkier. This guy's been fanning. His tail's all messed up. It's not as red as it should be. Very dark green bass. Signifies that there's a lot of grass in this lake. Stealing your spot. Told you to cast back in that corner.
I did.
It's a good one too. As soon as the salt,
The next one you got here.
as soon as it hit the water, I saw him hit it. Look at that. Nice silver fish. Silver and green. Pat's angry because he cast back there and didn't catch anything. I saw another one move back there too. I think I'm gonna get him. I told you, dude. You didn't cast back there because there's no way. So Pat cast back there with the biffle bug. Didn't catch anything. I'm throwing back there using the swim jig. Don't even swim it in there. I just let it sit. I get 2 back-to-back fish like that. Skinny. Looks like a freaking Florida strain. All right, 3. Think I could do it? Better pack your bags. Dude, it's right there.